So we are going to learn about the pi over 12 family. So that space on your unit circle that was empty between 0 and 30 degrees, we will now be able to figure out pi over 12 family without our calculators. So how does it work? This is going to be our question. Example 5. We want to find the exact value of cos of pi over 12. Now, we can also do it in degrees, so we can figure out one like sine of 75 degrees. 75 degrees would be that space between 60 and 90 that was missing on our unit circle. So the strategy is, well, we know the pi over 3 family, the pi over 4 family, and the pi over 6 family. And if we change pi over 3 to something over 12, we'd get 4 pi over 12. If we change pi over 4, it would be 3 pi over 12. And pi over 6 is 2 pi over 12. And we either need to add or subtract until you get the pi over 12 angle that you want. Later on, we're going to find out we are not restricted to just our regular pi over 3, pi over 4, and pi over 6 family. We can use anything that we know on our unit circle. So if you want to use 7 pi over 6, you'll be able to use that, or 5 pi over 4. Anything that's on your unit circle, any family member will help us calculate these things. So if I had 4 pi over 12, 3 pi over 12, and 2 pi over 12, and I was allowed to add or subtract, could you think of one way that you could get pi over 12? If you took pi over 3, which was 4 pi over 12, and you subtracted pi over 4, which was 3 pi over 12, can you see that you would get 1 pi over 12? Can you find another way that you could do it? Pi over 4 minus pi over 6. Because if you took 3 pi over 12 and subtracted 2 pi over 12, you would get 1 pi over 12. So any one of those will work. So if we choose one of the ones that you said, if we use cos of pi over 12 and use 4 pi over 12 minus 3 pi over 12, and if I write that in simplified form, that's equal to cos of pi over 3 minus pi over 4. And this is where our alpha plus beta formulas come in. Because we're subtracting inside of cos, so we have a formula for that. That's the cos plus sine one. Have you been practicing memorizing them? No. Okay. So then you can take this. We have the left side of our formula here. We have cos alpha minus beta. We could write it as the right side, which is a lot bigger. But when we do that, now we know what alpha is, so we can put that angle in for alpha. And we know what beta is, we can put that angle in for beta. Some of you at this point will be very tempted to distribute the cos. And that is not allowed because cos is a function. The only thing you're allowed to do here is use your sum and difference identities to expand. And notice that all 4 of those values are on your pi plate. So this is where you're happy that you get to use your pi plate for this test. And you can just plug them all in. Cos of pi over 3 is a half. Cos of pi over 4 is root 2 over 2. Sine of pi over 3 is root 3 over 2. Sine of pi over 4 is root 2 over 2. Multiply those all out, get a common denominator, and you get root 2 plus root 6 over 4. And we just figured out what cos of pi over 12 was without our calculator. We're not going to write them down on there. You could if you wanted to, but no, that wouldn't, then you wouldn't be allowed to use it on your tests, so. On your pie plate, along with all my other cheat notes. So, part B was sine of 75 degrees. The key to figuring out pi over 12 questions or 15-degree questions is figuring out ones that you know on your pie plate that add or subtract to get that. You can do it in radians or you can do it in degrees. So here's 75 degrees. 30 and 45 are both values that we already know. And you can make 75 by doing 30 plus 45. So then your 45 degrees becomes your alpha, your 30 degrees becomes your beta, and now I'm going to let you finish the rest of this one. I'll put the answer up in a bit. How did you do? With your alpha and beta, did you expand it correctly? Use the right formula. Plug in your values correctly. And you get root 6 plus root 2 over 4. One thing you'll notice after doing thousands of these, well, you probably won't do thousands, but if you've done a few of them, that your pi over 12 family for sine and for cos always has a root 6, always has a root 2, is always going to be divided by 4. What changes is what's positive and negative. Sometimes the root 2 will be negative. Sometimes the root 6 will be negative. Sometimes both of them will be negative. But for sine and cos, you'll always get a root 6, a root 2, and a 4 on the bottom. Part C. Find the exact value of cos of 17 pi over 12. Now, before I get you to do this one on your own, what we're going to do is we're going to figure out two things that add or subtract to get 17 pi over 12. Okay? You each have to think of a different one. Once you have an idea down, and I check it, then I'll put it up, and then that one's taken away, and you have to find a different one than the one that's up there. You can use any values on your pie plate that exist, and you have to find two things that add up or subtract to get 17 pi over 12. But they have to be two things on your pie plate. Because you can't just use, oh, how about 17 pi over 12 plus 0? That works. No, because 17 pi over 12 is not on your pie plate. We've got, you have to use 2. So what are those in radians? Okay, we got one. Oh, we got hands up. Okay, what was the official order of the hands?
Mine's been up the longest.
Take a seat.
Yours has been up the longest? Okay. Which one do you have there? Where is it? What, just pi over 3 plus pi over 4?
Yeah.
That will add up to 7 pi over 12, not 17 pi over 12.
Well, I failed.
8, yep. So we've got there's the next one. So that'll be 20 minus. There's the third one. Yes, we got a fourth one. Just more options are going away. Nope, that one won't work. Because if you get a common denominator, then it won't add up to 17. If you took 5 pi over 6, which is 10 pi over 12, and you subtracted this, you would get 7 pi over 12. Okay, so you need to get 17. All right, we got 4, 16 more to go. Well, there's 20 of us here today. Infinite. Took me a while to count. There's an infinite amount. But if you randomly guess, you probably won't guess right, but there's still an infinite amount of them. Which one do we got here? This will come out to, because this is 22, minus 4, doesn't that make 18?
I don't do
And
math.
this one, does that work?
So this will be 27 minus, yep. You got another one. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I've been recording this whole time? Boy, this is going to be a long video. I was going to pause it while we created this, but we could keep on going and find more and more and more. But one thing I wanted to point out is, do you notice a pattern? In each one of those, what's in common? There's always a pi over 4. Pi over 4, 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 pi over 4. Okay? Notice we have minus pi over 4, pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4, 7 pi over 4, 9 pi over 4. What's the next pi over 4 that someone didn't use? 11 pi over 4. So if you used 11 pi over 4, what would you have to do? Well, 11 pi over 4 is equal to 33 pi over 12. What would you have to do to 33 to get 17? You'd have to subtract, right? How many would you have to subtract? 16. Reduce 16 over 12 and you get 4 pi over 3, also on your pi plate. If you choose a pi over 4, any pi over 4 to start with, you will always be able to get one that works. So my recommendation is if you get 17 pi over 12, choose a pi over 4 that's close to that. So let's say you choose 3 pi over 4. 3 pi over 4 is the same as 9 pi over 12. What would you have to add to 9 to make 17? 8. And when you reduce that, you will always get something else on your pi plate. So on these pi over 12 questions, we always are going to need to start with a pi over 4. And you can choose any pi over 4 that you would like. So if we go back to our notes here, always start with a pi over 4. So if you chose 21 pi over 12, which is 7 pi over 4, you know that you'd have to subtract 4 pi over 12 to make it work. If you reduce those down, you've got 7 pi over 4 and pi over 3. Some people always like to just start with just plain old pi over 4, which is 3 pi over 12, and then figure out what you need to add or subtract to that to make it work. Now, no matter which one of those ones that we had listed before you choose, you will get the same answer in the end once you've simplified it. So some of you have already done the work with the angles that you've chosen. If you want to check how it turns out, you should have got root 2 minus root 6 all over 4. Am I standing in the way? It is a short part. This is how short it is. Sometimes you get questions that say, can you find secant of a pi over 12 family? And all you do is take the answer you got from COS and flip it. So that's part II of C. That's it. See, you have room.